Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Can I see a lot of arms? Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled to be here because I know it's just we all do so much work, and we all. I mean, at least I am not in a very connected position on the internet. So whenever I see teaching artists and I see the whole body of work that comes through, I get super excited. So let me start by saying ITAC Madeleine, because something that I think nourishes us, body and soul. And I'm going to go right into why I truly believe the arts have something to offer, and that it's been neglected for way too long, and I hope that ITAC, with its position of bringing so many different streams together and also having that kind of power of dissemination, we can do more to document, disseminate, and enter mainstream systems. So let me start off by saying I live in India, and I have black hair and dark brown skin, dark brown eyes. I am sitting in a small attic in France right now. And I'm really happy to be here. So my eyes are big, and I'm like waving my hands madly and saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. So, having described where I'm from right now, I have to say where I'm from in my background. I'm Indian and I live in India. I live right now in a small village called Kalavai Road, which is a Dalit village. For those who don't know so much about India, Dalit refers to what used to be called the untouchable caste. And now they have their voice, and we are all fighting for that kind of equity and equality and equal opportunity. So during COVID, I shifted entirely over to this village, and all my work now is based out of this amazing space. We're not connected much to the outside world, but when you see the range of art forms just across 10 villages, you would be amazed. And as we go through this hour, I hope that in the last phase, some of you will actually come home to where we live and share in real time, face to face, about what we do. So let me plunge into our topic for today. So when I say art in mainstream systems, when I say mainstream systems, I talk about systems like health, education, the security and police systems that we have, anything which is constructed by our society to serve a particular need. That is what I mean by a system. And typically, the arts is considered a separate system. We belong to the entertainment or the tradition, the carriers of tradition kind of system, according to me, right? But given, even in history, even in the thousands of years that Indian art forms have existed, it is very clear they have performed a role that goes way beyond entertainment. I'm going to take you to one of the first shlokas or verses written in a 2,000-year-old text called the Natya Shastra, which says, art is to entertain the illiterate, to educate those who need education, and to enlighten the others. So it's not just about entertainment. It is also about learning and about going beyond what we consider this particular connection between humans to explore all kinds of connections. And the reason and the way we do it is through this philosophy called rasa. Working with rasa for more than 20 years, I started out as a volunteer by the time I was 16. And over the years, creating more and more technique, I started working with different systems. For example, I'm just going to go into the last 3 years. During COVID, several of us got together because the first thing that happened when the lockdowns happened was the migrant immigration back to their internal migrants, not from outside India, but just people from the north, for example, working in the south, or from the east working in the west, or in the south or in the north. And people started walking 4,000 miles back home. And most of us were barred inside our houses because of the lockdown, and we didn't see what was happening outside. There was no journalist covering it. It was just word of mouth that we started hearing that people were walking. And the first people to step out of their doors and ask what is happening were artists. because that's what we do. We are curious, we want to know. And one of the first groups that was formed to bring people together and start even just distributing bread and water for those walking were traditional artists that are traditionally nomads that move from village to village. And they are connected to a huge network of people because of their particular activity. So over 1 year, we worked with the public distribution system, which is basically rations. We distributed more than 300,000 rice bags and vegetables and oil and sugar and tea, just things that people needed to live and survive during the lockdown because they were daily wage earners. So that is a very good example of how, because we are connected, because we know different people from different forms of living who come and watch us perform, we could, through WhatsApp, through Facebook, through different kinds of social media like Instagram, and even through mainstream media, we could actually bring in resources and then distribute them out. And when it came to the second wave, which was terrible in India with lack of oxygen, hospitals being completely overloaded, my car was like an ambulance. We were transporting people, we were transporting oxygen, we were transporting goats, we were transporting children, we were transporting all kinds of things just to make sure that people had what they needed. And then we transported vaccines, and then we built performances to demystify COVID and to demystify vaccines. I'd like Madeleine to show a little video now. It's called the vaccine performance, just to give you an idea, because when you see it, you really realize the power of what the arts have to offer.
ஏன் இப்படி பதறுகின்றீர்கள்?
மகாராஜா
என்னாச்சு உங்களுக்கு?
நம் நாட்டிலே புதிதா ஒரு கொரோனா நோய் வந்திருக்குது. அதனால மக்கள் எல்லாம் செத்து போறாங்க. அதுல இருந்து எப்படி மீண்டு வரது ஒண்ணுமே புரியல மகாராஜா.
பயம் கொள்ள தேவையில்லை.
எப்படி மகாராஜா பயப்படாம இருக்க முடியும்?
காவலன், அந்த கொரோனா வைரஸ் பற்றி நானும் அறிந்திருக்கின்றேன். அது மட்டுமல்ல, கொரோனாவால் பாதித்த மக்கள் 90% பேர் நலமாகத்தான் இருக்கின்றார்கள்.
90% பேர் வீட்டுக்கு நலமா வந்துட்டாங்களா?
உண்மைதான், நலமாகத்தான் இருக்கின்றார்கள். ஆகையால் பயம் கொள்ள தேவையில்லை, தைரியமாக இருங்கள்.
மகாராஜா, எப்படி பதறாமல் இருக்க முடியும்? அதுதான் காற்றின் மூலமாக வருதாமே. ஐயோ, ரொம்ப பயமாகுது மகாராஜா எங்களுக்கு.
உண்மைதான், காற்றின் மூலமாகத்தான் பரவுகின்றது.
ஆமா ஆமா,
அதனை தடுக்க நம்மிடத்திலே முகக்கவசம் இருக்கின்றது.
முகக்கவசமா?
ஆமா, அதை அனைவரும் முறையாக கட்டாயமாக முகக்கவசம் அணிய வேண்டும்.
That should be enough, Madeleine. Yeah, I'm not sure. The video was breaking up for me. I'm not sure if it was breaking up for everybody. I don't know if you saw the dynamism of the particular technique, but this is a technique of that particular group of Dalit people, and they do something called Katekuthu. Katekuthu is it's similar to the very well-known form called Kathakali from India, but doesn't have the legitimacy because it is owned by Dalits, by the untouchable caste, and hence has never been given any importance. During COVID, a group of young Katekuthu performers traveled over 72 villages, stopping fake news because there was so much of wrong information about COVID, working with very big, for the first time in their life, they would meet the collector, they meet the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, they met the entire health department, and they became ambassadors to spread right information. And they did two things that were very important. One, of course, because of the very fun nature and the very colorful nature of their performance, people would come and watch. And of course, we made this particular YouTube videos and then sent it out through WhatsApp. So a lot of others, there were thousands that were covered. But the second and more important is, you saw the two jesters. They are the jokers. They are dressed funnily, and they are very stock characters who talk to the king, and they are the liaison between the king and the people. And they are talking about coronavirus, and they're asking, "Oh my God, people are dying everywhere. What do we do? What do we do?" And the king is like, "Don't worry. It is like this. So it is like a formula that he's saying. But what is arriving here is that through myth, through images that people are used to seeing, through this whole construction, we are not addressing just the lack of information. We are also dealing with the fear and the anger against the system, because people felt they were being let down by the government, that they were not being supported. So an artist goes way beyond. That's the first point I'd like to make. We go way beyond just being purveyors of information or entertainment. We actually have this emotional impact that people are instantly attracted to. And this is not a live performance. This was just shot for the sake of, sending it out through WhatsApp. But in a live performance, people will have a lot of dialogue with the king and with the jesters in order to understand better how to protect themselves and come together to protect their community. What is quarantine? People live in huts like this, 10 people in a hut. You can't isolate if you get COVID. You need to have systems to isolate. You need to segregate one part of your village with people are sick and can go. So we played a huge role in making the whole identifying what are the symptoms of COVID, and then not getting, scared by it and saying you'll die immediately, reassuring them through the process of going through a quarantine, and then what is a vaccine, and then choosing if you want to take a vaccine or not, leaving it to their choice, but giving them information to mainly illiterate people. So that was with the health system. With the police, we started working first with migrants, because most migrants in Tamil Nadu, I live in Tamil Nadu, I'm Tamil, I speak Tamil, but I also speak Hindi, which is the language of mainly North India. And I could communicate, and many of us could communicate with the police in the area who are mainly Tamil, and hence did not understand a word of what these thousands of migrants were doing. And the police were overloaded. There are thousands of people on the street. They don't know what to do. They start beating. They start throwing them. Then everybody starts running, and it's a riot. So I still remember standing in a small lane, and there's, the police is at the back and the migrants are in front. And we are just like three of us standing in between, trying to figure out how to calm everybody down. And suddenly all I did was I lifted my head up and I went, "Ow, woo, woo, woo." I just howled like a wolf. Everybody just stopped. I mean, people were so angry. People were shouting on every side. Suddenly, the silence started going, and I howled 2-3 times. And people are like, "Who's this mad woman with, hair like this, and, obviously a very haggard face, and like howling like a wolf?" Because it makes absolutely no sense. But finally, we had silence. And that was the goal, right? We can think outside the box. We have no shame. That's a very, very important thing to say, that most of us have very little. We are used to, maybe especially theater performers are used to performance. We have a whole bunch of tools we can tap into in order to step out of that space and create a moment of silence. Just simple tools like these, right, came in so useful. I did not perform for 2 years. I had literally no income, no performance, no teaching. All our work was with systems. And at the end of these 2 years, when I came to ITAC in Norway, something, I think Kristen said it. She said, when I think Eric asked the question, give us an image, a photo of what you think the arts should be, what teaching artists should be. And she said, "I see a clown talking to the Prime Minister." And that just kicked off so many images in my head, saying we should be in positions where we can affect policy, where we can affect change, and where our talents can go beyond just the art of performance or the art of teaching art. So I'm giving a couple of these examples for you to understand a little bit of the work and where I come from. Some of our work takes us to the Himalayas. We work with the Snow Leopard Foundation, for example. We work with scientists to protect the environment, to set systems, and work with villages in community-based conservation. And we do this because, like a very good friend of mine, a scientist, says, "I'm good at science. I've gathered all the data. I am crap at community work. I have no idea how to talk to people or communicate with them. I have no strategies to do that. Now, I am a community artist. I have those strategies. And I work with visual artists, and I work with other, kinds of art in order to make sure that the community understands the information, understands the importance and the interdependence of the ecosystem. We tap into local songs and local stories in order to educate children there, So again, all these projects come through because of my particular form of art, which is community dance and theater. But that does not mean a visual art. I have worked with visual artists, with photographers, with traditional storytellers, with musicians, with rhythm, because every artist comes with a different bag of tools, and how we adapt these tools is how we approach the project. Again, a very important base of my project is this particular verse coming from a book called Abhinay Darpana. This is the first verse I learned as a child. If you're waking me up in the morning at 3 a.m. and say, Yato hastas, Yato hastas, Tato drishti, Tato manaha. It's something we learn as children, but it means where the hand goes, let the eye follow. Where the eye goes, let the mind follow. Where the mind goes, let the heart follow. And then we have understanding. Now, if you look at the base of this particular form, it says you have a physical movement, a physical understanding, followed by a sensory understanding, followed by an analytical understanding, which leads to an emotional understanding. And putting all this information together, we come to a complete understanding of what the issue is. Now, I've done a lot of work in places with full-on conflict, like Hindu-Muslim conflict or Muslim-Christian conflict, mainly religious or caste conflict. We try, I've been with mediation teams that try to go in, and they are basically giving motivations to people to stop fighting. They say, we'll give you food because poverty is a cause for violence. Or they try to figure out, what to work with religious leaders to bring them together. But they're talking. It's all verbal. It's all analytical. They think if you offer a rational understanding of the situation, that will immediately solve the problem. Je pense, donc je suis. I think, therefore I am. But sometimes we need to stop thinking to really be. And that's where the art step in. All of our modules are built on a physical level, on emotional triggers, on sensory triggers, and of course, analytical, intellectual understanding, as well as emotional understanding. We cannot compartmentalize. If you want to solve a conflict, you need to work with multiple layers to figure out why people are triggered, how they are triggered, what are the symbols that trigger them, and then how do you build dialogue. So in Maluku, which is the southern part of Indonesia, one of the longest running projects I did in the early 2000, 2004, 2007 till then was between Christian and Muslim communities, and I worked with mainly university students. And I started out saying, I'm giving you all Bollywood classes because everybody loves Bollywood. I can't stand it, but it's true. I was like, look, Are Baba, look, oh my darling, give me a look. That's what I was doing most of the time. But that's how we got everybody to come in. And then you had all these kids from all these different faiths. And then you would actually start building a dialogue, having a conversation. And we could actually substantiate and bolster the mediation process. And we're very proud to say that we work with Lembaga Indonesia Maluku, which is basically an interfaith, Antar Imam Maluku, which is an interfaith organization. And they really appreciate, they were begging for us to come back because they needed that place. They needed us to build that space where we could bring people together in where they were not thinking about their religion or about they just wanted to forget. They wanted to be there, do art, do dance, do theater, and slowly we could build that conversation, which is why I say any mediation process needs another creative approach. You need to work with community and you need to work with policymakers as well as with the lawmakers, right? But to layer the whole approach, you need to bring in artists. That has been my experience in this particular domain. So I've talked about a few of the domains that I've worked in, and I'd just like to finish. I've kind of broken my talk into like 3 sections. I'd like to finish with a small exercise, which I typically do, and some of you might have done with me before. So can I have everybody, if you have your videos on, but even if you have your video off, it's okay. Can you all have big eyes and bring your eyes into the camera? Big eyes, big eyes, big eyes. Oh my goodness. Sherry Coco, very nice. I'm seeing a lot of familiar eyes too. Hello, everybody. Okay, small eyes, small eyes, small eyes, small eyes, big and small, and big and small, and big eyes, and then big ears. Think you're this elephant in a forest, and your ears, the tips of your ears are so sensitive. They capture every sound, right? Big ears, and then a big heart. Take a deep breath. We all need big eyes to watch what's happening around, to really watch. We need small eyes to analyze and figure out what's happening, figure out how we play a role in everything. We need big ears to listen. We don't listen most of the time. We're already preparing what to say next, right? Big ears, and above all, listen, the big heart, as big as possible. So this is a small exercise I developed using our from Indian dance, because we use our eyes a lot, because in many of the cultures I work, touch is not possible. So it's eye contact that is the strongest form of contact that we work with. But it's an amazing form of contact. We can connect with just eyes. We don't have to step out of the boundaries of what is allowed or not allowed, right? But just to say that these are small techniques that all artists have built to create that safe space where everybody can speak and share, right? So I'm sure every teaching artist has their own way of getting people into the space, getting them to stop thinking of what's happening outside, getting them present in this moment and opening their hearts and communicating, creating, right? I'd like to, before I go into the second part, which is talking about the working group, I'm just doing a time check. Yes, it's okay. I would love to know maybe if anybody would like to share their context and any mainstream system they have worked with their art form, any group they have worked with. I'd be super interested in hearing. Madeleine is going to do the difficult job of timekeeping because we are under, strict, we want to respect time. So if you can just tell us, if you'd like to share with us in a few minutes what you do, then I would be super thrilled.
Artistically, what we do is the Empowering Clerks Network, which are a series of about 200 satirical documents that are kind of like it relates to what you shared about COVID, like how kind of like it works together almost with the government, because we do like satirical documents for each government issued. So if you have like a card for a credit card or a driver's license, for example, we make cards. This is a compassion card. That
it's
looks like
popular item.
You swipe it behind your ear, or underarm for compassion or love. We have joy permit that looks like a building permit, etc., etc. Many other examples, and we can share more later if you're interested.
The joy permits and the compassion cards are the most widespread and popular items that we have.
And it's relevant because this year we started doing a court, doing a clowning. We advocate for using comics and speech bubbles in court petitions and legislations and stuff, so it's kind of like bringing artwork to.
And not to mention we print and distribute my visual artwork too.
And visual, exactly, portraits, drawings of Rachel that are murals, beautiful. So these are a combination of works together.
Amazing, thank you so much.
You work with the legal system as well, right? Legal and social systems, I assume. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I heard a voice.
Yeah, I can go if you would like. Yeah, I'm David. I'm a clown and an artist, performing artist, and founder of Arcane Fools, where I kind of enable business to access this same potentiality with the art of imagination. So I do workshops and consultancy and concept creation and working with decentralized communities. Yeah, that's a little bit. Thank you, Sangeeta. It's a great session.
Thank you so much. That's lovely working with the corporate system, right? In India now we have something called the POSH Act. It's not posh at all. It's Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women in the Workplace. And many of us have gotten together to actually do workshops with corporates to look at what is sexual harassment and why women actually don't complain, and help set up systems where we encourage open communication and destigmatize sexual harassment and the guilt that goes with it. But yeah, working in the corporate system is just so hard. So bravo, seriously, amazing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I really concur with what you say about facilitating those environments. That it's not about necessarily enacting change, but kind of, yeah, facilitating that. Super cool. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. So we have legal systems. Now we have, if I think in the box, maybe Madeleine, you could read out some of,
Yes.
There were a couple of people who wrote what they do and what art form and which system.
Absolutely. So we have from Christopher, I do creative thinking, which is evocation of poetry, metaphor, language, and typography. We have Anne, who works with the Department of Transportation in Maine for creating a bikeway and moving a traffic sign. Eric says, I have worked with hospital administrators on the way they can improve patient care. Kathy says, I'm a visual artist and I work with the education sector. Jeff engaged with public school systems in Georgia and Utah in the USA, environmental art partnerships, sculpture and performance. Lynn has worked with civic leaders using theatre techniques that are rooted in ensemble building. Christopher works with senior citizens, college students, and children. There's a request for Ori and Rachel to share a link to your website. I don't know if you've seen that one yet. A few more requests for links to websites. Eric says, in my youth, we used theatre to challenge the Vietnam War. And we also have a drama educator. And apart from working with students, they've brought drama-based education into Singapore armed forces and hospitals. And finally, a visual artist who works with vulnerable communities and indigenous women in Guatemala. We work on community murals and various themes explained through art. So we have a whole ton of experience in this room, Sangeeta. So there you go.
I'm just like, my head is just going like
Right.
this with all this energy. Seriously. I mean, you guys just finished my project. Madeleine, I just have to record this, this particular chat box, and my project is done and dusted. Yeah. So you guys are just amazing. Seriously. Mwah. Cannot tell you how much love is just flowing out of me right now. It is so inspiring to know that all this is happening, right? And what is so frustrating is nobody else seems to know it. And that is the goal of this project. This project is not just to kind of speak among ourselves and, it's kind of, now I'm preaching to the converted. We're all talking amongst ourselves and we're all convinced. We all know the power of the arts. So the question it really is, we have done all this amazing work, and how do we now, and I'm not saying this from a selfish perspective, I'm not saying it just for the benefit of the artist, which is important. It is for the benefit of artists, right? Yes, we should be able to get more work, earn more, exactly. But it's for the benefit of society. Imagine if mediation teams systemically had an artist on board, they would recruit people who were qualified, who were trained in peace building and the arts. Imagine if the police department, in their training, police training, you had artists coming in to develop empathy. Same for hospitals and patient management. We should be fitting into systems to contribute what we have to offer. And I'm not saying that this small little project is going to change, but I feel if we can at least document and get together a whole bunch of work, there is something we can do to start attacking, mainly mainstream systems, to tell them all this is happening. And in our own areas, use collective experience to bolster and say, this is happening. It's not something that I have invented. A lot of us are doing it. Why don't you try it? So that's the goal of this particular project, to document the range of work artists are doing across different mainstream systems with different techniques, and try and see if we can disseminate as well as write about and get more legitimacy for what we do. Having said that, I started working in this domain more than 25 years ago. No, 28 years now. Oh my goodness, I'm getting old. At that time, there was nothing. There was really nothing. You could never, if I said I'm a dancer, they would be like, oh, do you perform? Do you teach? That was the only questions asked. There was only career available to a performer, you know? And now look, the world has changed, and it's changed because all of us are manifesting. We just need to maybe accelerate is the feeling I get, you know? So for example, in therapy, movement, dance therapy, art therapy, it's very acknowledged now. In fact, they have some insurance systems, and that's like the final what do you say, the final badge of honor, right? If an insurance company recognizes that art therapy is worthy of being insured, that means we've arrived, at least in therapy, you know? So there are systems that are recognizing education. In the education system, there are many artists that have set up curriculum, and it's regularly being plugged into mainstream education systems, but not across others, like hospitals, like security, like police, like domestic violence work, social work. We need to build momentum in these areas is what I feel. So the project that I'm proposing, because this particular think tank is part of the innovators, ITAC Innovators project that we propose. And it's been selected because we want to bring together, it's a 6 to 8 month process where we bring together everybody's work, different kinds of work, and we try to see how we can disseminate it. So there are 3 phases. The first phase basically is where artists who want to collaborate on working with their art form in a mainstream, if they want to build connection, we all come together and we build a project that does not resemble each other, because one could be a visual artist working with a hospital system, another could be a theater artist working with a health system. You know, it could be a very different proposition, but we put parameters in place, above all evaluation parameters in place, so that we can gather data from these projects and also exchange technique, because we all want to learn more, we want to grow. I mean, I would love to start figuring out how to use those compassion cards and slide it under my armpit or behind my ear. You know, I would love to use strategies from other artists too. So we engage, we exchange technique, we build projects together, and we try to document and draw data from them together in a 6-month process. It would only be for a few hours in a week, this kind of work. Actually, no, most of us would be plugging in with projects that we are already doing. So it would be even less. It's just adding to what we do, you know. And the second phase is, many of us might not be able to actually come in and work together, you know, might not have the time or the mental, space for it right now, but you can we could send out forms where you could choose to tell us what art form and which mainstream, system you're working with, and a little bit about it. So then we can build a roster. We can build a whole series of data about the number of artists across the world who are doing work like this, and start grouping it together according to the system or according to the art form. So then you could actually, maybe from that data, we can build collectives of all people working in health, people working with police, people working with advocacy, people working with climate, which is happening anyway, but just again, accelerating that process. But most importantly, we come to the third phase, which is dissemination. What do we do with this data, right? We have a whole bunch of, information about different artists working in systems across the world. What are we going to do with it? I propose at least like multiple forms of attack. One is, of course, social media. We all know power of social media. There are podcasts, there are Insta posts. We can start disseminating as a very strong series. And I think ITAC already has a huge social media forum through them and through allied forums. But I think it's also important to go mainstream and start hitting like a whole bunch of universities, start offering curriculum, start writing up, see who is interested. And then each of us comes together and says, okay, in my community, for example, now I know the Director General of Police of Chennai, and I really like the work that the martial artist is doing on self-defense for women. So I'm going to propose that we go and do this training for the police system and start plugging into it with a proper salary and with proper documentation. So that's another way of disseminating, where we start entering other mainstream systems that we are not used to, but we're using the collective work that we have built, the collective data that we've built, to say this work is internationally recognized now, and by an institution called ITAC, which is widely known. And hence that gives us more legitimacy to propose these projects. So the dissemination will happen on multiple levels, and we will actually build these strategies as we go. I'm sure many of us have many more ideas of dissemination, and instead of one brain working on it, there could be multiple brains working on it, and again, I think a lot of analysis would go into the data given to know the kinds of intervention we do. For example, the most popular kind of intervention that people associate with artists is as advocacy, especially with now the climate crisis. There's so many artists who are painting about it, who are singing about it, who are manifesting in different ways, sticking themselves to famous paintings. They're all doing work that in advocacy. So advocacy is one of the strongest ways in which we see artists manifesting for social causes. But there is also places like building a safe workspace. So you're looking at quality of life and well-being. Many of us enter corporate spaces. We enter tribal communities. We enter, places of conflict. And we enter in order to build bridges, right? We create spaces to build bridges. And this is a very important part of our work. And sometimes might not have an artistic output. We might not create a performance out of it. We might not do a painting out of it. It doesn't have an output per se. It might not, but we have the foundational technique that helps us build these bridges using the tools of art alongside tools like classic tools of mediation or classic tools of education or classic tools of health. For example, I work in refugee camps in France. Now I work with the health system there. Now, the refugee camp has an amazing health center, and the nurses and the doctors are very well trained, right? Why would they need an Indian dancer from India to come and work? It's because the women there, who are mainly from, say, the Middle East or North Africa or West Africa, they don't feel confident to walk up to the health center. They have never made eye contact with a doctor or a nurse. They don't feel that these people are actually there to listen to me. I don't have papers in this country. I don't think French people really want to talk to me. So if I have my periods are not okay and I might have ovarian cancer, which I don't know, I won't report it. I won't go ask for help. So my job was to build bridges. So I go in, I work with a whole bunch of women. I'm speaking random words and random languages with kids and women. And then after the third session, I'm bringing in the health professionals. I'm bringing in nurses and doctors and, the people who actually work in health. And we're doing all these games together. And at the end of the day, I've done my job of connecting them. And then we talk about the reproductive system. We talk about domestic violence. We talk about sexual violence. We talk about a whole number of things. And these women who've come from all over the world, some have crossed continents on foot, finally know there is another group of people who are really interested in their well-being. It is not just a door that's marked first aid and marked health, right? So we build bridges. That's one of the biggest things we do. And the third way that I have now figured out that we intervene is in spreading awareness about extremely taboo topics. For example, sexual violence. Most victims of sexual violence usually don't never report, and usually they have a lot of guilt. You feel like you asked for it. For example, menstruation, nightfall, puberty, nobody talks about. Nobody talks about religion and what is going wrong in a religion. We always talk about all the beautiful things in a religion, which are many, but never do we say, can we have a critique of our religion and kind of figure out what we need to pull out. It's a complete no, you're disrespecting my religion. Nobody can make a commentary on it. It immediately becomes a war, right? So these are all taboo spaces. So what I call this work is breaking, I call it Besharam, which is, I call it being shameless. We've built curriculums, and every workshop we do has a curriculum of be shameless in it. Because we need to be shameless to actually open up and talk about things that are troubling in our world today. Right? So there are many ways in which artists intervene, not just advocacy, not just building bridges, not just in our ability to cut across taboos and, very difficult conversations. I'm sure each one of you is doing a whole range of things in other ways, but I think we can draw that data out. There's multiple ways in which this data can be analyzed, and it can be produced and disseminated in multiple ways too. I'm talking too much now, so I'm going to take a breath and then I'm going to ask you if there's anything in this conversation that any thoughts that you've had in this conversation. I know Madeleine is like checking the chat box, so I know whatever you write there is going to be said as well. I have an eye problem, so I'm not able, I really have to go in like this and read stuff my eyes are not okay. But but anybody wants to share anything before we move to the last section of this conversation?
I would like to add something. Sorry, Jennifer. Go ahead.
My name is Jennifer Clement. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. I'm on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. They're the Indigenous peoples of the area that I live in. I'm just really grateful to meet you all this way in this community and see the amazing work that you're doing. I'm coming at it from an educator's perspective, but I've worked a lot with a lot of women, a lot of young women who have been dealing with a lot of the things you've been talking about and finding ways to create spaces where they can talk about those things, obviously through an acting school, but also across departments and across maybe we believe hopefully a lot of artists and young artists feel comfortable talking about those things, but often those taboos have really gone so deep that we're realizing that we have to work hard to create those spaces. So that's something I've been working on this last few years as part of my education work. But I'm just really grateful for this and thank you for holding this space and making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Those are conversations that are really important, so important on gender and violence.
So we had someone else who was trying to talk there too. I think there were two comments, eh?
Yeah, it was me.
Great.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you for the work you do. It's really impressive and beautiful and necessary. And anything we can do to support, we're happy to do.
Thank you, Ori.
Thank you, Ori.
It's Ale or Ali. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, Ali.
There we go.
Ale?
Yeah, I just had a comment about what you're saying about joining forces and seeing what everybody's doing. I received your workshop in Norway. I'm a visual artist, so movement is not a way I communicate. It's kind of tough, but after your workshop, I think it's necessary to add, in my workshops also movement and do some other things. I thought it was a great way of, making that connection with everybody. And after that, now I'm trying to see how to do it, bring other artists, like theater artists, of movement artists, in my workshops, because I'm not that good at it. So I need to join forces with other artists as well. So I think it's a great idea what you all are doing with this. So thumbs up. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I have to say this before the next, if there's anybody else to speak. In the Snow Leopard Foundation, we work in like we're up 12,000 feet up in the Himalayas. There is no signal. We are living in small tents and we are all digging holes in the ground as toilets, And in these conditions, you can't carry a lot of materials and do artwork, right? You don't even have an electricity connection to play music. And but what we found, I worked with an amazing visual artist, and I use this technique now so much, is instead of drawing, we ask kids to make forms on the ground and get materials like sticks and stones and dried cow poop or yak poop and make visuals out of what they feel their connection to nature is. And I have to tell you, some of those visuals are amazing. And now I use this technique in communities across the world. So yeah, as much as you feel kind of like I can't move, my drawing skills and my art skills, like visual art skills, are pathetic. But now I have so much more confidence because I've worked with artists and I can pick up some techniques to include in my work. Because the good thing with visual art is that at the end, something stays. You paint a t-shirt, you take it back. The performance arts, it's wonderful, but it's transient. It's in the moment, you have a great experience, but you don't have a memory of it. Whereas the t-shirt you take back with a logo painted on it that your team has created, for example, that is a visual memory of something that stayed, So yeah, we all need to join forces. There's so much we can learn from each other. And that ITAC conference, I have to say, was so frustrating. I wanted to take every session and I couldn't. I wish I could duplicate myself and do it all.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of having too much to do and not enough time, we have a ton of comments, which I will read out to you in a second. But I saw one more hand up that I thought maybe, is it Fatiha, wanted to say something?
Yeah, hi. How are you? So I'm a visual artist. I'm actually a nomadic artist. So everywhere I go, I try to build communities, and it's based on my piece. Sorry, it's early for me. On Nomadic ArtNet, where I invite students to kind of like build on my embroidery session, to have them invite other students in their classroom, and then further away, and then reach out to the community. Like I was in France this winter, at the beginning of the year, and I reached out to the refugee at a place called the Fabric Nomad, which is also a place where people learn to readapt their crafts skills. So those kids they were from poor neighborhood, so they were able to recognize themselves as those refugees. And recently, they just went to Morocco to kind of do they took the panel with them, and they became a facilitator of embroidery session, which bridged them to another community. And here, I'm working with youth homeless, which is my big passion here living in Hawaii, and seeing it grow for many, many years. I use the opportunity and the trust that I built with them to create a residency that is actually bridging an understanding from high school students, telling them like, okay, nobody's an expert on that. You are learning about that. And also working with my young adults homeless to translate into backpack, because they're using backpack because they want to be invisible, to kind of translate the idea of homelessness, but the reality. So one is thinking about the idea of if they were homeless, the other one is actually translating, and they're going to be combined together. We're never going to see each other, of course, because of their privacy, but that's what I'm doing. So I kind of when you talk about France and how France, it actually built me, because being marginalized as a French citizen, but was always kind of in this kind of margin, but are you really, really French? Always questioning my status. And then when 9/11 happened, living in the United States, my status was again. So that was always my kind of way of I need to bridge community. That's the only way I can make it making sense. And if I don't do it at my level, then it became this big thing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. And I saw one more hand, so I think Gideon might have something to share, Sangeeta, too.
Yes, please. Thank you so much, Madeleine. This is just a quick one. So, Sangeeta, there's a great work that you're doing, and I think that you're doing it so well. God bless you, and then keep doing it well. Now, what I just pictured out of all that you were saying is true. We have to be shameless with all that we are doing. I quite remember some few time back, myself and then Peter, we started going to rural areas to encourage people, so that, for instance, we used to do something called TFD, Theater for Development. So for this one, we write a story, and then we know that, okay, this is what is going on in that particular area. Probably is teenage pregnancy. If we can depict that thing in dance, we do it in dance. If it is also in acting, we just do it in acting, so that at least whatever message we want to make the people get, we don't just put it out like that, but we just do it in a form of an act, and then they appreciate it. At the end of it all, they all come together. We tell them that this is what you have to do, so that you can bring that particular problem that is going on there to calm down. So at the end of it all, what are we trying to do? We are making sure that people should be able to draw closer to you, so we can build them up. Where I work in the hospital like this, I realized that people were having issues with dance. And they were like, they want to dance, they want to dance, they want to dance. And I was like, okay, why not? Let me just try it. I went there, and then one person was like, oh, if you can teach me how to dance, I'll be very grateful. And there's a health professional too, a doctor, and he's like, okay, why not? So for these past few weeks, this is what we've been doing. Every time I make sure that I go there, I have a dance session with them. By God's grace, they are all coming, people are really joining. And I realize that people just love the art, but some feel like they just want to hide a bit, but we are trying to bring them out. We bring them out of whatever small box that they are in, and then we bring them out into their life. So whatever means that we have to use, if it's in dance, acting, music, visual art, whatever that we just have to do. Let's just do it so that at the end we bring people to the lamplight. So thank you so much. Kudos to everybody and much greetings to greetings from Ghana. We love you all. We love you all. Thank you, Madeleine.
Thank you, Gideon. I'm conscious of time, Sangeeta, so I'm going to pass it back over to you. And if anyone hasn't had a chance to speak, please do pop it in the chat because the session will keep going, so we can always revisit.
Yes. I know that many people have constraint of time, though the session is unlimited. It's not really unlimited, but yes, I'd quickly like to sum up what the flow of the working group would be, and then add a very exciting component that we're building in India right now. So like I mentioned, the first phase would be all of us who choose to come into the first phase. You can choose to come to in any phase. And the first phase, if you choose to come in, it's to build a working group together, to build our projects together, to exchange technique and try and see if things work across. And now with so many of these tools we have online, it is very exciting and very possible to build real relationships. Though, of course, face-to-face there's nothing to beat it, right? But we'll come to that later. There is an exciting possibility for maybe a face-to-face. But yeah, so first phase, to build our working groups, choose a mainstream system, build whatever we want to do and execute it in resonance with other partners across the world. And we would try to build buddy systems, right? So that we are working intimately with a smaller group within the larger group, so that it becomes more intimate. And the second phase is the documentation, and that documentation will be of the people in the working group, but also we want to send it out through everybody's network and try to get as much data about artists doing this work. Like if now Gideon is in Ghana, I'm sure you know many African artists, I have a lot of friends in Burkina Faso and Senegal, and there'll be others who have, contacts in Southeast Asia and East Asia, in South Africa and South America. We try to gather in North America, Europe, as much data as possible and try to analyze them with different filters, right? And then once we're gathering, this is second phase, then we go to the third phase of dissemination, where we can try to disseminate once again, just through the open world, through social media and different kinds of social media, but also to gain legitimacy through institutions. Like if there's a very strong group that has come out with work, let's say in prisons, we try to get together and, see how many of the other systems, prison reform systems, we can hit and propose this work to them, so those artists can get more work and this work can be properly documented. We can tie up with universities and tie up with teacher training programs, if it's education system, tie up with police training programs. So we try to enter systems through their training methods as well in the dissemination phase. Not only dissemination through social media or through mainstream media, which is also exciting. So these are 3 phases. And we've already put together a group of 6 amazing women and those who identify as women in India who are already ready to start off their working groups. One is Sarla. She is a martial artist doing an art form called Silambam with a big long stick. And normally it's only men that perform this form. And we're building an exciting curriculum about self-defense for young women, and also including components of understanding gender, understanding violence, understanding patriarchy and systemic oppression. And she would be then taking it across to many schools in Tamil Nadu. Then we have Lakshmi, who is quadriplegic, and she's been quadriplegic for 16 years, but with repeated physiotherapy. 6 years ago, she could move her shoulder and her hand just a little bit enough to turn an e-reader, and she plunged into the world of reading. And now she's a storyteller, and we are trying to put together a curriculum. We're building her ability to run a curriculum and create a livelihood for herself, working with people who are in English literature, but who are basically Tamil speaking and hence have a great difficulty accessing English. So she's going to be helping with literacy. And like that, we have the Katekuthu girls who are performing all night Indian epics, but again, in a very strong male space, and how they're using it for caste violence to bridge gaps caused by caste, because they come from the Dalit caste themselves. So we have some exciting women in India already ready to plunge in and start their projects. And we welcome anybody else who'd love to come in and become buddies. And we can build, like if you're working with a group of kids in Norway or in France or in Morocco, and we are working with kids too, we can try and see if we can exchange, build, systems, as well as grow our practice and learn from each other. And this comes to a potentially exciting fourth phase where I would love to invite the working group or whoever is interested to India next year and kind of synthesize all our experiences together, but also really live in our village and see, in its brutalness, how much of polarization our world has. We are polarized by caste, by color, by gender, by our belief systems. And there's so much we can do to combat that polarization and build those bridges. So we hope the phase 4 is something that we are aiming for. And when I proposed it to Madeleine, she was very excited by it, but I don't know how it will happen. Yes, but it's something we really want to do so that at the end of this whole process, we can actually get together and celebrate in person. And we know how precious that is. Right. And you can meet all these amazing artists in India, because where I work, the village, it is poor. People don't have money. They are daily wage earners. They have no land. They have nothing, but they have so much art. We have all-night art forms. We have drumming forms. We have singing forms. We have solo forms and group forms. We have dirge. When you come on dice, you sing and you kind of collectively let that grief out. There's so many art forms just within like a 10-kilometer radius, and of course, much more to explore. But we'd be happy to welcome you in that end phase as well. And maybe it could be a lead up to the ITAC in New Zealand, because we are halfway to New Zealand if you're from Europe or Africa or from North and South America. So yes. So yeah, Madeleine, do you have anything to add to this regarding what we spoke?
No, I think that's really, really a great summing up of what the project hopes to be and what we hope it might grow into. I, for one, am just absolutely delighted at the thought of stopping in India on the way to New Zealand to come and finally get to visit you in your real context and work. If other people feel the same way, we have no idea of the logistics of how that will happen yet, by the way. But for those who are interested in phase 1, 2, and 3, which we have a much clearer picture of, I've shared that link in the chat, and please go there and sign up. That form will be live. We're not going to shut it after the call for people who watch the call back or, are in other time zones. But the sooner you sign up, the less likely you will forget and get busy with other things. So I suggest that the sooner the better, and then Sangeeta will be able to follow up with you to figure out how to collaborate with those amazing women that she talked about and get cracking on those 3 phases for the moment. So I'll pass it back to you, Sangeeta, but any logistical questions, let me know.
Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it open now for a few minutes, because I am aware that while it is an open session, many people might have to leave after an hour, which is why Madeleine told me, get all the information out in the first hour. But we do have time to chat and exchange now. Most importantly, I am reiterating the fact that I feel ITAC is an amazing platform to get a whole bunch of people together. All of us here already is a source of wealth for me, right? It's a source of richness. And I do not think money is the only way we are measuring what is rich and what is necessary for the world today. So I would love to invite you to join us in any phase, because we have to be realistic to not overload ourselves as well. So if you'd like to enter in the second or third phase, you're most welcome. Otherwise, if you just like to reach out just to know more, please feel free. We are always open to conversations. And if there is any way we can help you as well, because our team has a whole bunch of resources. If there's any way in which we can contribute to your work, please do let us know. We'll be happy to do so. If anybody would like to share, or if Madeleine, there are lots of things in the chat, if you want to just read out a few, so that, because I think many people wrote in the chat.
Okay, so this is basically now an open floor space to go back to either sharing something that struck you about the discussion, asking any questions about the whole process. And while you sort of think up those questions or something to share, I'm going to go back and just read some of those things we didn't have time for just before, because I think that conversation was one that we could have taken the hour to have, right? So we had someone who was a graphic designer doing large wall-sized murals, now training community members, particularly of Indigenous and other underserved communities, to do this work so they can develop and use the talents to tell their own stories as seen through their ears. Oftentimes, when outside artists, including myself, capture their stories, many nuances, meanings, etc. might be missed, not seen or heard or sensed. And so this is an opportunity to take back ownership of their own stories. Then we had a question for you, Sangeeta, which maybe could kick off a Q&A portion of this, which is, how do you advise teaching artists to think about financially supporting themselves while they do this important work? Did Sangeeta just disappear? Is that what just happened? No, you're here. Okay. Can you hear me, Sangeeta?
Sorry, I'm sitting on top of a mountain in France and the internet just crashed suddenly. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. Well,
So
great
sorry.
reason to get your
I just
Wi-Fi
went for
back. That's great. I'll read it again. It was a question for you about how do you advise teaching artists to think about financially supporting themselves as they do this important work?
Yeah, so I actually did a course on this because I was just so frustrated about 5 years ago, but always being stressed about, I live project to project. I'm a freelancer and I don't belong to a system, right? So it's been very hard. So I did a map of different of can you hear me, Madeleine? Madeleine, can you hear me?
Yes, you cut out for a little second, but you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back now.
Okay, got it. I could suddenly see everybody frozen. Yes. So I put together all the different kinds of capital that I have. And I found out that the strongest capital I have worked with in the last 20 years is community capital and cultural capital. And of course, compassion capital. My financial capital was very bad, but once I had this understanding, I could put together the networks that I was a part of and figure out how people have supported me over the years. And this helped me to understand how to stabilize my income, but also how to stabilize my anxiety, right? Because in India, our retirement plan is not only financial. Our retirement plans are community oriented. People around you support you. Your children, I don't have children, but generally your children, your community, your people around support you. So what I would really recommend for teaching artists to do is build networks, alternate networks, and find out how others are getting money in and getting to live, and then build on that. Again, being a community is far more important and gives you the connections that you need. This is what has worked for me till now. But yeah, I on the finance side, I suck so badly. Anybody else qualified to answer this question? Please feel free to.
So I see Jeff has a hand up. So Jeff, you want to unmute and share?
I can share a thing by example. We're doing a house painting for money, so while being talking about art and global art projects. And Rachel is here too. We have a house painting job.
Fantastic.
Jeff, I can see your lips moving, but you're still muted.
Okay. I'm getting used to doing it on a phone. So can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead. No, not so much. Oh, I think you've frozen, Jeff. Okay. We'll come back to you when you rejig. Fatih, I see you've got a hand up too.
So it's me again. So I found out like it was very difficult to be paid. So I live in United States, and I did this a project in France, funding and suddenly like I realized that it was how difficult is they have like to pay me. And luckily, I use my network. I'm like you, I'm very resourceful. I'm a nomad, so I have family everywhere, friend everywhere, because I moved a lot for many reasons. So luckily I have that, and my family supported me in some way. But I'm like, my question is like, how can we be like as international artists when we are working in different countries, getting funding to be sent? Because they have like so many reason to not, it's like you do the work and then suddenly you're like, okay, so I'm supposed to be paid. You had the funding, and it's a national education of all of the places. And I'm still like the project finished in November, and I'm still working with them on that. And because of what's going on in France, and I know you are experiencing like a French strike and slowness of getting paid. So what I do is like subbing, doing all kind of crazy jobs to make sure that I can pay for some of the work I'm doing here. But again, project to project, but it's definitely like building on like, it's not money that we quantify our work. It's really by the growth that's when we leave, how we leave the community. But yeah, it could be interesting to see like how the law in different countries are an obstacle as well.
Very interesting. So one thing we do in India is we are paid in kind very often. For example, now I work with the Vellore Collectorate. It's the biggest city nearby. It's the biggest district. And we do a lot of work for the health system. Like we work with leprosy awareness, and we work in their leprosy clinics with people with leprosy to spread awareness, but also to help them combat depression, mental health. So one of the outcomes is that many of our artists are very poor, again from Dalit communities, but we now have access to top-notch healthcare because of the system we're working with. And that's another reason why I say when we work with mainstream systems, we benefit a lot. We can benefit. If we work with the education system, I always insist any of my artists working in schools that their children have access to become part of that school. Right? To go to those schools, which are sometimes extremely swanky and chic and speaking English, while these people only speak Tamil, right? So that's one more reason why our work is multi-layered. It's not just has a single goal. We always have multiple goals, and we have to look out for the well-being of the artists in the project. So I feel that entering mainstream systems as well as entering university systems. This is the ridiculous part. For the first 10 years of my life as an artist, I was paid more to do research. I would apply for grants to do research and write papers. I was paid more to do research than actually be a practitioner. And the practitioners I was researching on were making like no money. There's a lot of money in university systems, especially in grants, because as humans, we prize knowledge. We prize documentation of knowledge, right? So that's one way I have been able to survive as an artist, is to write up and publish whatever I have researched on. So again, plugging into the university system with the data that we have might be a very useful thing, also to provide legitimacy. So again, coming back to the case study of art therapy, why is art therapy and movement therapy given so much importance? And it's now entered a system with a lot of validation. It is because it's been researched, and universities are now giving courses on art therapy. Now a few universities are giving courses on community theater, but we need to have students go out with that badge of saying I'm a teaching artist or I'm a community artist, and actually plug the mainstream system into that degree. It's like how when you go and do a computer degree in India, if you're doing a bachelor's in computer science, at the end, you have a bunch of companies coming in and recruiting people. We should follow the same model for artists. So it becomes normal and natural to pay artists. So you can enter through some system. There'll always be a bunch of us outside the system, and that's why I meditate a lot, like a lot.
Okay, thank you. I see Jeff is back. Do you want to try again and unmute Jeff?
Okay. All right now?
We've got you.
Yay. Sorry about that. Okay, so the shamelessness, Sangeeta, is key, I think. And I have observed you in action in your shamelessness, and it's powerful. I think sometimes people outside of our field, outside of the people we engage with, don't get it. I've done projects and had people say, "Why did you do this project?" I said, "Because I'm questioning the dominance of the patriarchy," and had the reaction like, "Well, who do you think you are to question anything?" Because I'm an artist. I mean, I'm not asking for permission, but I think that when you do some of the things you've described to me, both during this webinar, during this think tank, but also when we were together in Norway, I've had the thought like, Sangeeta, you just put yourself out there boldly, and I think that as a leader in our field, that you can embolden more of us to do this. But I think that some of that is internalized, that artists get in their own way and say, well, who do I think I am to question this or to have this power? That's my comment.
So true. We do question our legitimacy a lot, and we shouldn't. Maybe that should be something we should work in our first phase, is when we get together in our working group, is also validate and, learn to assess ourselves and live in plenitude, Yeah, so I think, thank you so much, everyone, for such an amazing sharing. And I really look forward to communicating with you either in a proper, working group, but otherwise just reaching out. I hope you all will respond to an random email from me in the future saying, please tell me about your work and send me the data that we can plug you also into the system, and maybe start looking at forming, sub-communities and sharing work and building our strength so that, again, we can make a better life for ourselves, but also that the world, I truly believe this, the world needs us and needs to benefit from what we have to offer. And we have no time left, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's needless war, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's substance abuse and alcohol. There's so much work we're all doing in all these fields. And we have so much knowledge, so much wisdom to offer. It needs to be documented. There is no other word. There's an urgency right now. It needs to be documented. It needs to be put out there. People need to know that there are other solutions apart from, endless paperwork and, capitalist solutions, corporate. Now, even NGOs are encouraged to become like the corporate domain. And it's very, very disturbing when everything becomes transactional. And yes, there is an element of transaction, and that's healthy. Like, for example, we need to be paid, but we need to bring in the bigger picture, which is something that is non-transactional, which cannot be put into words sometimes, but which brings the quality of goodness and well-being to every project. And I truly believe in that. Thank you so, so much, everyone. And I think that's it for today. Can we all open up and send out flying kisses to each other or say bye or whatever? It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I was really nervous about this workshop, so I hope it was okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.